The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100. We had a lot going on specifically on the day. We had some big breakouts of supply. And when we look at the charts, I mean, it points in a direction that is contrary to what I did believe in the market. However, we have to take advantage of this and go into the market with an expectation of what is going to happen based on supply and demand and fundamentals. Let's get to it. Now, before we jump into that content, I have to ask you to do two things. Like and subscribe. Every single day I post content for you, so you are prepared on this market. You know what to expect. Right, wrong, unbiased. I tell you exactly as it is. If I'm wrong on the day, I tell you I was wrong on the trades, right? So when you come here, you can understand and have a little bit of faith that when I'm speaking here, I tend to say, in my opinion, what truth is, right? And then I will also, as always, highlight when I'm wrong, right? Like we did in the previous video. So let's get to it. So what we're going to do here is go over ES and look at a few things. Now, we're going to start on a higher time frame and we're going to work our way down. If we look at what's happening on the day, there's no real big fundamental views of things happening this week except Thursdays when GDP comes in. That'll be the biggest fundamental activity happening this week. We don't have Fed members, lined up to speak either. That was all last week. So when we look at what's happening, we kind of have to look at what's going to be moving the market, which in my opinion will be heavily to do with earnings. So let's dive in. Now, going into the beginning of this week, like I said on, believe Friday and I said yesterday, I came into it with the belief of we're probably going to start breaking out. However, what did that mean for me? I would not close my positions as far as the puts I had until we broke oversupply, just based on what my trading strategy was. So when we go and look at NQ this morning, immediately when we broke over 11.8, I just cut it. I was done. I posted on Twitter, everything in between. Now, again, we've talked about that position a lot. I've gone over it, and I've talked about where I was wrong in that. Obviously, the reaction that we got down to this level, which I'm going to go in depth about right now, but there's a few things we need to talk about that's happening in the market right now. Now, when we broke above that, I was like, we're done. Wipe, slate clean. We're going to look at it. We're going to start trading what the market's giving us. Obviously, as we broke above supply on ES and on Nasdaq, we started trading to the bullish range. Now, with this week specifically, we have Microsoft earnings, which we do believe is going to be the most influential activity probably that we're going to get in the market. I can't imagine anything else moves us as much as Microsoft's earnings, my personal beliefs. We do have Tesla as well, but I don't think that's going to be the biggest factor in comparison. Now, when we look at where we're going and how we kind of moved here, you quickly pushed up through the next supply. Now, what I will say, if we look where these levels are, I just want to show you a visual. This goes back to previously December 14th and basically December 13th, which if you remember, this is when we pushed our local high. CPI data came out, then we dumped again, and then obviously just kept on going down. Now, I don't love the supply right here at around 11.83 up to 11.995. And I'll go into exactly why, even though it is on a 4 hour and it's very clear and visible. I love this 11.8 level because we've held this for so long. That's why I was very confident in getting more puts at that location. And then when we broke above it, that's why I cut. So when we look what happened here, you can see you came into the first time, we dropped immediately, contracts went up over 50%. And that's why when I'm on this channel, I always tell people, do your own DD because you're responsible for your risk and I'm responsible for my risk. And I always do the risk reward metrics and everything in between. And again, I always think it's important to highlight when you lose. Because if you don't highlight when you lose, I think especially people on this platform of YouTube and Twitter, you're held to a higher standard, in my opinion, because you have people like yourself watching us, right? And for me, this is what I do all day, every single day. So I try to give you the best breakdown of what happened and where I could have improved and just, every single step of the way. Now, like I told you here, my goal here was 100% or kind of flop on this. Again, looking at this, let's just talk about the problem with that thesis is if you're swing trading something, your position size is larger. We all knew my position size was larger. So when we went in here and we dropped down to 50%, I probably should have skimmed off at least, very minimum, very, very minimum, at least half of my position, okay? And then I could have, rode the rest of it to break even or to where we broke out above. That's what I should have done. Hindsight, I got greedy, overconfident, and I let it run back up, cut it right there, the end, right? End all be all, that's what happened. Total, it wasn't terribly bad. And I kind of did the metrics on how much I was willing to risk, where I got into those positions, and I entered a bulk of my position, over half at the end of it, down here at like 11.75 when we retested, like I said I would. So that's the metrics there. Now, as we move through this, I'm not looking at the market. I want to be very clear right now. I am not viewing the market from a bullish lens on a long-term spectrum, okay? Understand that. When I'm looking at the market, I have to view it a few different ways, specifically because I have the Discord, I have my day trading that I do, and then I have YouTube. So I try to break it down as simple as possible. And as we're looking at this, in the short term, I do think we have strength. I'll go into exactly why and break down exactly what happened there. But the bear thesis in the short term for myself has kind of taken a step back. And this is short term, like week and a half, okay? Now, when we go into long term, I still think everything that we covered as far as inflation and what's happening based on data, I think all those issues are still there. I don't think they've gone anywhere. I think it's a major issue fundamentally with our economy. But what we have to identify is there's a difference between the short term, 1-2 weeks, and then the longer term, which this isn't even long term, but 1 to 3 months, the next year, etc. So there's different viewpoints you have to do. So it's hard to convey my message sometimes here, but that's my overall viewpoint right now. So when we look at where we're going, we mounted above supply, which you can see right here. You broke above, retested, pushed up, invalidated, pushed back down. Now, in my opinion, as we look at the market, I believe Qs are heavily leading right now. I think Qs are the strength. But I think SPY gave us probably the best visual on what's happening with price action on the day. If you go to about something like, let's look at the 15 minute to see intraday action. I want to show you what I was looking at. And if you're not following on Twitter, I recommend doing so because I post a lot of these charts, and this chart, I posted it on there, right? So what were we looking for? We had that great push this morning, and we broke above previous highs right here that were established previously last week, okay? The highs of 400.28 and then like about 400.15. So we see this morning what happens. As we zoom in, we can see we come in, we test. We can either go to something like the 5 minute to break it down even further to show you that price action that was established there. And if you look here, you test, you break above, you get a bull flag back to the previous high, and then you bounce even further and find a new local high around 402. Now, in my opinion, I think your target here on SPY has to be around 404, 405. But when we dive into this deeper, I just want to show you the behavior at the end of the day. And as I publish this on Twitter, I hope people understand what I'm saying. I hope people, if you have questions on Twitter, just comment below and say, hey, Tyler, I have a question about this. I tend to answer the questions as long as they're like semi-educated. So if you say, hey, Tyler, should I buy this? I'm probably not going to respond. But if you say, hey, Tyler, is that a bear flag? Is this being invalidated right now? Then I'll give you a response. Can you see the difference in how someone wants to be educated and someone just wants to be spoon-fed and, hopefully they make money on this, right? I want to help people that want to help themselves. So, and again, I don't charge for that. I try to do as much free stuff as possible. I want to highlight that. So as long as you're willing to put in the work, there's a lot of content here that I can help you with, right? So when we look here, this is what happened. You push down, you bear flagged right into that level. But again, what happened today is something that's kind of abnormal, right? Volume has been our best friend to talk about. And if we look here, you couldn't get follow through volume from the sellers and you pushed back above. So honestly, when we look at the day's end hold, I kind of love it. If we look here about the 4-hour time frame, it's not bad. If we look at this candle, you held above again. This is the same thing that I was talking about on the way up previously. All you were doing, if we just come and we just look at this 4-hour time frame, it's really simple. All you're doing is breaking previous levels and then mounting, right? So we can come in, see previous level here, you broke above, mounted. We come right back here, local high here, came back, pushed up, mounted, pushed even higher. And then eventually you broke down below, right? And then we couldn't break the major level of 387 and then also an NQ around 11.3. So everything that we do here ties into each other. Whether it's bullish, bearish, the charts are never really going to change. It's very simple when you're looking at supply and demand and overall price action-based trading, looking at how buyers and sellers are behaving in the market. It's never the secret sauce. You're never going to see crazy indicators or anything like that. Now, when we step back into, I do want to highlight, we do need to look at what's happening specific. I'm going to say about the 2-hour time frame just to give you the better visual, but I do want to bring this out so you can see what's happening on the 200 SMA. So we can look at the daily as well. This has been one of the biggest levels on the market. So when we look here, you're right back above it. And if you look at what happened on the day, looking at the SPY, you totally mounted it once again. You came right at open, boom, mounted, pushed straight up. And if it looks on the 2-hour, it looks like a bull flag at the end of the day. I'm just saying. Now we're going to get to fundamentals in a second, but we'll cover just a little bit more of the charts. Looking at Nasdaq, what's happening here? Honestly, my target on Nasdaq is the 200 SMA. I think that has to be your target. And if you want to visualize exactly what happens at this point, Again, this is just my opinion. You have not been above the 200 SMA and essentially since last March. That was the last time you had a little bit of a push right here. But just so you know, you've been rejected once, almost twice, almost 3 times, and you're there again now. So this is going to be very big, right into like 12,000, 12,1. We'll get into that here in a second. That's a big level to be watching for. Also looking at that weekly SMA, which we've been talking about specifically on the Nasdaq, you're back above it and you're holding great. So again, as we look at these time frames, they are performing. Again, you can't just be biased, and you're never going to catch me being biased, or at least I try not to be, right? So when I'm looking at the market, even though my long-term perspective remains bearish based on what's happening with inflation, what's happening with China, and what's happening with energy, right? I still remain bearish. However, I have to acknowledge these short-term aspects. And again, people are probably going to, really hate this video, but it is what it is. So we look at what's happening here with the S&P. And again, I want to give you just the best visual. So we're going to go to the 2 hour, and then we're going to go back down to the daily. As we look at what's happening here on the daily time frame of the 200 SMA and the 200, 100 SMA, this is the best you've been moving over the 200 SMA, I would argue, in almost a year. Okay, I'm just, love me, hate me, don't really care. But if we look at what's happening here on the 200 SMA, I think you have to argue this is one of your best candle closes in a year, going all the way back to we can argue till last March. So that's your best candle close right now. So you're looking really good. As we take an even deeper look and collapse all this, get rid of indicators and zoom out, you're actually trying to break and hold over the resistance line of that year-long downtrend. Now, again, I want to say this. This does not confirm a bullish market. I want to highlight and say that as much as possible. And I'll actually say it right now. If you want to really look at the market from a bullish lens and say the market is pivoting or the market's flipping and we're out of a bear trend, you will need to make a higher high. You will need to at least get above like 4,150, 4,100, give or take. If you can get to 4,150, I think you're looking really good. That's going to be a very big statement, a very big move from bulls. Nasdaq will continue to need to lead. Again, what's the difference between this move now and the move that we had back in October? Equities are following. Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, they're bouncing very, very strong. Okay, Meta, they're all bouncing. Now we have earnings, and I still anticipate a lot of these earnings to be bad. However, what I have to say here is we have to look at what's happening on the equities, and they're still moving great. Now, a very big part of this that could be impacting us is, like I've been saying, is what's happening in China. But we also know, and I'm not going to go down this too much today, we do know, what has the Fed said about China? If China opens up too quick and they start to push demand too high, it could reignite inflation, and that could re-spark the growth of inflation. So we need to understand that. But what would happen in the short term if inflation started to pump back up? Until data readings came out and the Fed started to react to that, you would expect equities to go up during that time. Again, now this might, I might have just tongue twisted or confused you. I don't know. But again, if you have questions, comment down below. I'll try to answer. So that's where we're at. Overall trends you're trying to break out. Now, on this week, what are we looking at? There's not a lot of fundamental stuff we need to cover this week. This week specifically, biggest earnings we have. We do have some big Dow stock ones. Okay, I've said it a lot. RTX, LMT, we have Boeing, basically your biggest Dow stocks, to be honest, is like Caterpillar, right? And then we have some energy coming at the end of the week. Very big. As far as what's going to move tech in the NASDAQ specifically, I side with this. Microsoft. I think it's your biggest one of the week. I think Intel's going to be a little bit important. Tesla, very rarely does Tesla move the entire S&P. I'm just going to tell you right now when earnings occur. So just understand that. Go look back at earnings date and go look at the following day how much the S&P has moved initially in the first hour. It's very minimal. I'm just going to tell you right now. Just go look. Microsoft has had a bigger impact as of recently. I also think credit cards will be important, Visa and MasterCard, because it's going to show the strength of the consumer. We've already heard what Bank of America and Goldman Sachs and them have said about the consumer, but we need to get a better visual of what the actual credit cards, companies are saying about the consumer, what do we assume here? My personal viewpoint is the consumer will weaken, demand will weaken, and eventually layoffs will have to start occurring, which will negatively affect the market. But it just hasn't happened yet. And if you attack this too soon, you run the risk of doing kind of what I just did with Nasdaq, is being too aggressive on the put side. I still like data positions for the downside as a hedge. I still love them. I still think they're going to play out. I still think they're going to be awesome. I'm just kind of waiting for my entry, being a little bit patient here. That's my strategy. That's what I'm doing here. Now, looking at the calendar. Again, I always look at the calendars to help you guys out. And look at this. This is investing.com. It's absolutely free. Go to investing.com. All you do is go to news and go to economic calendar. You can actually sort out all these, but I just have them all up. And this brings me to another subject, Chinese New Year, 1 second. So if we look at what's happening tomorrow, you have manufacturing PME, but that's 15 minutes into market open. So I just don't know how to, overall classify that. So we'll see. Again, I think it's going to be dropping down just because of demand. But if we look at the entire week, I covered it yesterday. The biggest thing is going to be Thursday. I will stand by that statement. I think Thursday, fundamentally based on news, that is going to be your biggest day. You're going to need to be watching out and paying attention to what is going to be happening specifically with, I don't think core durable goods, but it's going to be jobless claims, and you also have your GDP. I will say it's possible Wednesday coming out, Bank of Canada, their rate decision and what's happening with their monetary policy, that will slightly impact us, but I don't think it's major. I think our data will be more valid and more important. Why? Just based on what the Fed says. The Fed continues to say that we're stronger than everyone's market, and we've kind of burned in everyone's heads that America's market's the only one that matters, which I think is very silly. But again, I just have to anticipate and give you an educated guess on what's going to be happening from some of these reports, just so you know, and just giving you my visual, my input. Now, again, I want to say something right now before we go any further. When I'm not swing trading, the only thing I'm willing to swing is probably dated puts right now. I am not in any of those. I want to highlight that. If I am day trading, if I'm doing anything, it is quick scalps in and out, in and out. Giving you a visual. I just want to give you a really quick visual of trades that we took today. Specifically me. I took three trades on the day. I traded SPY a few times. I traded SPY on the bull flag that we had. This was during the live. We covered it live. We looked at NVIDIA. NVIDIA is another great play. I'm going to cover a few of the stocks that I'm liking, and I covered QCOM, right? So it's quick in, quick out. I'm not even holding these trades for over an hour. I'm in and out, taking my money and running, right? If you're going to lose in the market, what I'm going to tell you right now is take advantage of those losses. And what do I mean? Learn a lesson. If you're just losing and not learning anything from it, you're just hurting yourself and you're just gambling. What did I do from this? I told myself, okay, I'm going to get the money and get out, right? So some of those contracts ran a little bit further, right? But nonetheless, you have to secure those profits specifically in this market. Now, I'm going to go into some of the stocks I'm liking and where I see us going. Right now, specifically, I still think going into Microsoft's earnings, I think you have strength. It's my personal opinion. I'm going to tell you right now. So I do think SPY is going to head towards 404, 405, possibly tomorrow, unless some really bad news comes out, which so far nothing's come out, so thank God. So going into tomorrow, favorite place. Number one, I love the whole semiconductor sector. It's my favorite sector right now. Now, a few things that we're going to look at here. I'm going to bring up the 200 SMA, which is right here, and we can look at QCOM. You can see you're finally above it. You mounted, you pushed up to 132. Now, targets here give you a better zoom out to around the 4-hour time frame. You can see our level is going to be around right here, 132.7 up to around 134. I do believe you can hit 134 on QCOM tomorrow. I'm going to tell you right now. But it all depends. All right, every video I'm going to say this. It all depends on indexes. Right now, I am liquid. So if I go into the market tomorrow, I'm going to be looking for indexes to give me the sign to go long. If indexes point to the upside, then these are the plays that I want to take. Okay, so this doesn't mean that I just wake up, well, Tyler said QCOM, let me blindly click calls and hope to God something good happens, right? No, that is not what I do. That is not what happens, right? I give you things that I'm looking for, but you have to use some common sense behind them. Next up, NVIDIA, obviously, I love the sector. You have to understand what's happening here. You just broke above local highs at 187. Now, if we go to something like the 15-minute chart, I think you get very excited. Actually, we're going to go a little bit shorter, down to the 5-minute, so you can get a better visual here. You can obviously see you continue to make higher lows. I mean, this is actually kind of ridiculous when you really consider it. And then you are making a pretty strong ascending triangle. You're trying to push up. You're seeing a lot of momentum come in here. I definitely think you get a push towards 197, possibly 200 here on NVIDIA. But again, what am I looking for? Pressure from SPY, bullish behavior from Nasdaq, and to get a break and hold above 192.2, right? Or a break of today's high locally. That's what I'd be looking at there. Going in a little bit deeper, I posted this in Twitter. I posted on Twitter for free. Told everyone, and again, I do want to highlight just so people know that I'm not lying to you. Again, I try to never lie to you. If I ever do, I try to come out and say, oh, I made a mistake, the end, right? So when we come and look at what happened with Disney, Posted this the other day. Target 107.5 all the way up to like 109. Why? We're looking at this because of China's opening. Now, again, I don't want to trade China stocks. I have zero interest in trading China stocks. I'll go into exactly why in a second. But you're seeing you mount above the 200 SMA, and you're pushing up towards that range now. Disney is strong into earnings because Netflix, one, subscriber growth, very good, very beneficial. Netflix directly impacts Disney. Number two, China's reopening. Massive source of income for Disney with what's happening in China. So these are all visuals you need to be expecting. They're also reopening the movies that are coming out there. So Disney wasn't able to make a lot of money off of specific movies that weren't being released yet in China. So when you look at box office numbers, you have to consider that as well. So these are all things that will directly impact Disney, and I do think you have upside to around 107.5 towards 109. I'm just going to tell you that right now. It's been one of the more bullish stocks in the market, and it just kind of continues trending no matter what the market does. So again, absolutely love them. Looking at the rest of everything, these are my favorite plays right now. I still love the upside on a few others. I think Microsoft till tomorrow. I mean, this was one of the ones I traded this morning. But I mean, 245, you already hit it, so I don't want to touch it too much more. You are mounting the 100 SMA on Microsoft, so you still look great in the 200. But if you're trading this, it's really quick, really fast to get in and out. And again, I would not be holding anything through earnings. I do like trading stocks that have earnings coming up, but I don't like holding through earnings. Because if you can play them before the earnings, then you protect yourself based on the implied move coming from that. So typically you won't get destroyed even if the move moves completely opposite to the way you're moving, as long as you close that option before earnings. That's just one of the things that I look at, one of my strategies. Have a good one, traders. If you have comments, leave them down below. See you tomorrow.